Hey guys, welcome to our virtual flamingo feeding here at Tracy Aviary. This morning we're in with our Chilean flamingo flock and we're going to be doing some feeding and some training. So first off, we got a couple of different types of food here that we're going to feed to our flamingos. They're actually basically the exact same thing but in different sizes. So in the red bucket we've got our main flamingo food. That's what they get every day, twice a day. It's based on the food they eat in the wild. So it's based on shrimp, like krill, brine shrimp, other aquatic invertebrates. And then this smaller stuff is pretty much the exact same food, but tiny. So that makes it a very rewarding version of their food for them. They treat it like it's a treat, even though it is the exact same food, just small. So we're gonna start out our training here actually with this bright red bucket. This is what I use to cue the flamingos that it's food time. As you can see, it's already kind of working. They're already over here. But if they were sleepy, I would go ahead and I'd shake this bucket, gets their attention. And then I'm gonna go ahead and put this into their feeder so that they can eat it throughout the whole morning. Now that I've got their attention and I've put out their breakfast, we're gonna sit here and do the rest of our training. So we've got this little bowl of what we call our flamingo bits, this tiny food. And for every flamingo in the water, they're gonna get rewarded with a toss of the bits. So I go ahead and I toss these directly into the water because flamingos are what we call a filter feeder, which means that they'll actually sift their food out of the water. And sometimes when they're close to the surface of the water, you can see little bits of water shooting out from the corners of their mouth. Now what happens is they're gonna put their beak into the water where all the food is, and then they're gonna rapidly move their mouth to suck all that food and water up into their mouth. And then inside their beak, the roof of their mouth is lined with little tiny bristles that are called lamellae. But they basically do the same thing that baleen do for whales, where they trap the tiny particles of food and let the birds spit out all the extra water. That way our birds don't have to drink gallons and gallons of water every day just to get all the food that they need to be healthy and live and survive. They do drink water as well, but they don't need to drink all the water that they put into their mouth every single day, which is why we see them filtering out that food from it. That's also a really cool adaptation that lets our Chilean flamingos live in either freshwater or saltwater. So because they don't have to drink every drop of water they put in their mouth, they can actually live in a saltwater habitat. If our weather was probably better, we could theoretically see them living in the Great Salt Lake because there's brine shrimp aplenty and they can live in saline environments, but because flamingos are not native to Utah, we don't actually see that. Now, our Chilean flamingos, I get asked this question an awful lot. They're not a very bright pink, but they're still pink. These guys are actually one of 6 different species of flamingo. So these guys are called Chilean flamingos. And the birds that we expect to be the most pink are actually the Caribbean flamingos. Those are the ones that are native to North America. So if you've ever seen pictures of flamingos and they're this really, really brilliant highlighter pink, or if you've seen like plastic lawn flamingos that are that bright, bright pink, those are modeled after our American Caribbean flamingos. These guys are actually a more average shade of pink for flamingos. Most flamingo species are this sort of lighter shade of pink. But each species of flamingo is its own individual special shade of pink, and they'll have different color features on them as well. So for example, our Chilean flamingos are kind of this paler pink, but they have the really bright pink feathers on their wings. And then they've got really solid black feathers on their primary flight feathers, the ones that they use to fly. And then they've got a little bit of pink on their ankle joint and their feet, and then the rest of their legs is gray. Some other species might have yellow highlights on their beak or their legs, or they might have darker red highlights, or they might have more solidly pink legs. It's all just based on the species of flamingo that we're talking about. Now this bird here right in front of us, she is one of our special birds. I love her dearly. Her name is Newt. That's N-E-W-T, Newt. And her identifier, if you come and visit the aviary, is Orange02. And we talk about her as being a really special bird, near and dear to our hearts, because she was actually hand raised by one of our keepers like 7 years ago. So she was a really special scenario where Her parents laid her egg way too late in the breeding season when everyone else was already getting off their nests and raising chicks. And so they were too worried to set on her egg, so we took it and artificially incubated it in one of our special incubators. And then once she hatched, our keepers hand raised her for a couple of months, until she was old enough to come back on the exhibit and live with the flock. So she's a little bit special because she's a little closer bonded with the people who come into her exhibit than she would be if she was a normal parent-raised flamingo. But that kind of just helps us out with cool experiences like this, because she gets up close, she gets a little bit more personal than everybody else, and she lets our flamingos feel a little more comfortable around people. Now, if you look out into the rest of our flock here, you might see a couple of birds who look a little bit gray on their heads, necks, or the backs of their bodies. Those birds are actually not old, like some people would expect. With people, you go gray when you're old. With birds, or with our flamingos at least, they actually start out gray when they're young, and then they slowly turn pink over time. So the way that they turn pink is they go ahead and they eat that really good food, their natural diet, or the food that we feed them here. And all of that food contains this special beta-carotene or pigment that helps them turn pink. They're able to digest their food in a way that lets them use that pink in their feathers. But it takes quite a while to build up, so they have to eat this for years and years before they actually turn all the way pink. So we've got our 7-year-old Newt right there next to our 1-year-old. Her name is Basil. And you can see Basil's still a little bit, she's 2 years old. 2-year-old Basil. She's still a little bit gray on the back of her neck, and that's because she's only 2 years old. It actually takes a flamingo anywhere from 2 to 4 years to fully turn pink. And we'll see that gray kind of transition into pink over time.